Alright everyone, some people in the legacy media are referring to the current period as Kamala Harris' honeymoon period. That is, that her approval rating has gone up. She does better in polling than Biden, depending on the poll. It depends on the firm. A little bit closer to Trump, as in more of a 50-50 sum game. And they're calling it a honeymoon period. Well, you know, she's got this grace period of a month or two, and then, you know, the attrition sets in. I don't think of it as a honeymoon period, though. I think of it as the Kasich effect. I've explained this before, but for the benefit of anyone that doesn't understand what I'm referring to, it's a reference to the 2016 election. In matchup polling between the four remaining Republican candidates and Hillary Clinton, Trump actually polled the worst at times. Rubio did a bit better. Cruz at some times is closer to Trump, I suppose. John Kasich, the former governor of Ohio, he polled the best. And what I explained to people is that that was because he was more, for a lot of voters, of a stand-in for generic Republican that you know nothing about versus Hillary Clinton, who everyone knows about. The more you know about a candidate, the less people like them. And so it's called the Kasich effect. The idea is that that vacuousness actually lends towards better polling because they see Trump and maybe they don't like what he did. And so they lean towards anyone else, any Democratic candidate. And if they don't know anything about that Democratic candidate, of course, there's no baggage because they don't know anything about them. What's going to happen over the coming months is that that's going to begin to wear off. When people associate Kamala Harris, who is desperately trying to prevent this from happening, with the Biden administration, when they ask the question, when did you know he was sick and incapable of running, when they look at the lack of policy, because I can't name a single accomplishment that Kamala Harris spearheaded, when they look at these things, I think that so-called honeymoon period, which is really more the Kasich effect, the vacuousness, begins to wear off. I would suspect that that'll take about a month. And so towards the end of summer, at least in the northern climate that I'm in, you know, when Skyrim sets in, I think that Kamala Harris will suffer considerable attrition. I think she'll end up in the end around where Biden was polling. She'll be behind in most of the swing states. She'll end up losing most of them and go on to lose in the election. I'm not worried about Kamala Harris, nor should you be black-pilled or worried about it. But what we should do, since she did raise a fuck ton of money, admittedly, mostly from big donors, but, you know, for what it's worth, she's going on an absolute blitz right now, paying influencers and shit online. The counterbalance is to volunteer a bit of your time to try to get one other person to vote for Trump. And preferably down ballot for reasonable candidates. Of course, I'm not going to endorse every Republican candidate because I'm not a conservative, I'm not a Republican, and I don't really give a damn about some of these people. Like if Mitt Romney were running again, do you think I'd be endorsing him? No, of course not. I lend my voice to the cause. Other people can lend other things to the cause. Maybe you don't have an audience at all. You know, you just watch content. But you've got that one reluctant friend who doesn't want to go to the polls. You've got that one person down the street whose door you can knock on and harvest a ballot and say, look, we'll get you registered to vote. You can go to Scott Pressler, by the way, and he can give you information about doing that, registering people to vote. It's not a difficult process, you will see, in most states. It depends on the state. You know, states generally run the election laws. Borderczar Harris is having a hilarious honeymoon right now. But it's not really a honeymoon. That's a facade. What's really happened is that people know less about her than Biden. Biden, therefore, in their minds has more baggage. He's more directly associated with the economy, with the border crisis, etc. Remind people that Kamala was effectively tasked with running the border. That's going to go over really well. She was part of the administration, literal VP, and a lot of people don't know anything about her. That's because she was effectively an absentee. The one advantage that she has is that she almost never went out in public. She almost never made appearances of any kind, other than a handful of diplomatic arrangements and behind closed doors meetings and stuff. She basically just sat there and did nothing. That's a problem. That's not the way that a president needs to govern. It's a big problem. You've literally got it's sort of like if Dick Cheney had run for office. Well, Dick Cheney was also a behind the curtain, behind closed doors sort of vice president. Pence was generally absent, but he did a little bit more, actually. He did more public appearances than Kamala has, or Cheney did, or even Biden when he was VP for the most part. If anything, it's hilarious. Mike Pence was the most outgoing and gregarious of recent vice presidents, actually, that we've had. That's saying something. The vice presidential role, by the way, is also not necessarily a springboard to the presidency. The fact that you've been a heartbeat away from the presidency doesn't mean you have necessarily all the on-the-job training. Kamala is going to embark now on a campaign in which she's going to come out and make public appearances, including apparently before 70 people at a nursing home for unknown reasons, and say vacuous shit that doesn't always make sense and generally conveys no real meaning at all. This is what she's done as vice president as well. There's a reason why she was an also ran when she was running, try to be the Dem nominee in 2020. She got crippled by Tulsi Gabbard. She was already on her way down, though. I correctly predicted that and said, don't worry, Kamala's not going to be the nominee. If anything, she's more likely to be the running mate. I was correct about that as well. But she doesn't debate well. She's not very personable. And when she speaks, she doesn't always convey a meaning at all. If you really parse apart, because I like linguistics, if you really parse apart some of her speeches, she's not saying anything. She's just using words. She's certainly not casting any spells. She's probably toast. I think that Trump is going to be reelected, partially because his opponent is just so vacuous. She's capable of speaking. Okay, she can use words. That's wonderful. So can I. So can, well, I'm assuming all of you. Maybe you're mute. That's fine too, by the way. Disability, that's all right. But Kamala should be mute because she doesn't say anything. It's like Jen Psaki. Well, we're going to circle back around here and talk about an entirely different issue from what you actually queried me on. There's a reason why she works for, I think, MSNBC at the moment. There's a reason for that. Total coincidence. Harris should be cast off as the vacuous Borderczar. I'm not particularly worried about her, and I wouldn't be worried about the new polling, because we've only got a smattering of it anyway, and they look like outliers to me. She is going to have a closed gap, but it's going to be for, in my opinion, a fairly short period of time. I don't think that it will last. I think, again, if anything, the Democrats would have been wise to simply let Joe run and give some sort of stupid excuse why he can't attend the second debate, which he clearly couldn't prevail in. Kamala will lose in the second debate. That's almost certain. Vance will probably crush whoever her running mate happens to be because he's a reasonably good speaker and very sharp. At the very least, he's charismatic. I suspect that Mark Kelly is probably at the top of the list at the moment. Shapiro happens to be Jewish. That'd be a problem with the Gaza voters. Buttigieg is gay and part of the administration. That would make it look dynastic. And then that Waltz dude, he's old and nobody knows who the fuck he is. So I suspect that it'll be Mark Kelly. You could do worse. I mean, be sort of like Tim Kaine or something like that. But Harris is getting a so-called honeymoon. But it's because people don't know who she is. They know relatively little about her policies because they haven't been exposed to any decision-making that she's done. That's the whole problem. And that's one thing that you can say to your friends, well, Kamala sounds pretty good. Ask them what she accomplished. Can you name one policy that she imposed or supported, other than abortion, of course, while vice president? A single one. No, because it's basically just she stood behind Biden the entire time. So she's basically the female BIPOC Joe Biden. There's no difference between the two of them. That's about all. Peace out.